Hello everyone, back again. Bill Young from Michigan Record Club, and today I'm going to tackle the chore of going through my discography of AC/DC. I have a lot of records. I don't have them all, missing just maybe a couple, but I have some good ones. So I think we'll just jump right in because it's a little complicated. I have some notes here, and we'll go through the notes, talk a little bit about some missing songs and where they're at. But to start right off, I want to tell you about an album called Marcus Hook Roll Band. Who is Marcus Hook Roll Band? Well, all AC/DC lovers know that this happens to be an early record where Angus Young was, well, he wasn't old enough to drink, and but the rest of the brothers were. And this has all the brothers on there. It has Alex, the oldest. It has George on here and his buddy, Harry Vanda. They're both on here. Malcolm is on here. Angus is on here. And a couple other friends. And they put together this. It's just a light-hearted record. They were having a blast. They were drinking a lot of Granddad whiskey, which happens to be called Tales of Old Granddaddy. And this is a record, if you like AC/DC, good stuff. Early AC/DC. Speaking of early, AC/DC went through a lot of changes when they were trying to find a lead singer before they finally fell onto Bon Scott. Bon Scott played with a couple other bands prior to joining AC/DC. These are okay. It's only for the real die-hard AC/DC fans because one of the albums isn't too bad, but the other one of them, they sing a lot of blues rock songs, and the other one is just terrible pop music. But yeah, you can have a good laugh when you see some of the pictures of Bon Scott before he joined AC/DC. But let's jump right in now to the real catalog. And the real catalog started with this album. This was High Voltage AC/DC. And this is an Australian pressing. I'm not going to get into all the prices, but believe you me, these pressings from Australia at Albert Productions are quite pricey. They didn't make a whole lot. There's a few, but yeah, these are hard to come by. And this High Voltage AC/DC is very different from the first one that was released in America. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that here in a second. The second album AC/DC released was TNT. Now, TNT never was released in the United States. Not with that title, anyhow. They had went ahead and released these two albums in Australia pretty much before anybody else in the world got to listen to their music. They were planning on trying to go over to UK maybe do some recording over there and get their, sorry about the glare there, and get their name noticed over there, become somebody in the UK. This is a great album too. Another one, hard to get a hold of. These are just like mint. They're so clean and just excellent condition. And so while they were over in Europe, they did go ahead and they did come up with a press listing of what they wanted to put on that first album. This is what AC/DC High Voltage album looks like, or looked like, from Europe and the UK. Shortly after, this is what we become familiar with here in the United States. All these albums are called High Voltage. They're all the first albums released. But the first two albums and these first albums left a lot of music to be cut off. I'm going to try to go through this a little bit so you can understand. High Voltage in Australia had Baby Please Don't Go, She's Got Balls, Little Lover, Stick Around, Soul Stripper, You Ain't Got a Hold of Me, Love Song, and Show Business. Now those songs, there's only two of them that show up on the original High Voltage in America. But the album TNT, it had It's a Long Way to the Top, which was a big hit, Rock and Roll Singer, The Jack, Livewire, TNT, Rocker, Can I Sit Next to You, which was another big hit, High Voltage, and School Days. Now, most of these records are the songs that you will actually hear on the US version of High Voltage. And they were on the TNT album in Australia. But anyhow, the songs that didn't make the cut, so to speak, on that first album in America as High Voltage showed up later in a record I will show you called 74 Jailbreak. And on there they released the song Jailbreak, which was the first time they released it, along with 4 other songs that was on the original High Voltage from Australia. Have I got you mixed up yet? There are some songs that just totally came up missing, but later showed up on some of the music that was produced in America. On High Voltage, the song Stick Around never showed up to 2009 on a CD compilation called Backtracks, along with a song called Love Song. It never showed up until Backtracks in 2009. The song Rocker never shows up anywhere else other than TNT. And then the song School Days shows up later in 1997 in Bonfires, which was another compilation released here in America, 1997. So, those 2 Australian records, High Voltage was released in 75 in Australia, TNT was released in 1975, December, in Australia. High Voltage that we come to know was released in May 14th in Europe and the US. And when I was young, I didn't get it was really hard to know what were the good songs. There was no MTV, there was very little to go by of what was happening in the world of music. But I did subscribe, excuse me, to Cream magazine and a couple of magazines out of New York. So I did stay up to par with a lot of the new music. I heard about AC/DC, and the record magazines were just praising it. So, at least the ones I was looking at. So, anyhow, I bought the album, the first US pressing, showed all my friends, tried to tell them, this is great. I mean, this is just, I mean, you love Led Zeppelin and you love Rush. Wait till you hear this, AC/DC. And sure enough, my friends came around, and I made believers of all of them, and I was pushing AC/DC back in the early 70s. Next we have the Australian version of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Now this was released in Australia in September 20th, and a version that looked similar to this, or actually this album was also released in Europe in December of 76. But at that time, it was not released in America. We were still going on the first record. We were still going on High Voltage. In Australia, the fourth record now, Let There Be Rock. Awesome. This is one of the hardest albums, it seemed, for me to find. And it is just loaded with little pictures. Excellent, excellent songs. I got my all-time favorite in here is Crab City in Blue. And it's some of the songs that Bon Scott wrote the words to. The guy was quite the joker, and some of the words are pretty raunchy, and the songs are pretty raunchy too. Here, let me show you that again. Let There Be Rock. That is the Australian version, and that came out in 77. But this version of Let There Be Rock came out in Europe and the United States, and that came out in the 77 also. Excellent, excellent music. This has some really like Dog Eat Dog, Problem Child. This had some really good music on it. America was starting to warm up to him about this point, and Atlantic Record had stuck Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap somewhere on a top shelf in the archives. They did not release it at that point in time. Then AC/DC released Power Age. And this is like the first album cover that they stuck to and was released as is in Australia, Europe, and America. There's some tinting differences, but another great album. And Power Age was released in '78, pretty much all around. The Power Age album, released in Europe, though, had one song that was different. It had a song on there called Cold Hearted Man, which our album didn't have. Never showed up until 2010 on Iron Man 2. And that's one album I do not have yet, but I do know about the song, at least. All right, AC/DC, If You Want Blood. Okay, they were looking for some live music now. They thought the world was ready for their live show because, let's be honest, AC/DC's live show was just unbelievable, like nobody else's. Just so much energy between Bon Scott and Angus Young prancing around during the concerts. Angus would jump up on Bon Scott's shoulders and he would prance right out into the crowd on some of these venues and having a good time. Bon Scott did love his alcohol. And he probably loved it too much, really. Because he was having a lot of drinking issues between him and the band. Next up was Highway to Hell. Now this is the Australian version. Again, another album I had a hard time finding. And the American version. A lot of flames and fire on the Australian cover. But after the release of Highway to Hell, Bon Scott dies. And AC/DC is left to try to find another singer and trying to figure out if that was what they were going to do. But it seems that they didn't have any doubts. They were ready to take on the world yet, with or without Bon Scott. Step in Brian Johnson from a band called Gordy. It's a pretty good band. Again, if you like AC/DC and you like their later music, Back in Black, you got to get a hold of this album. It's definitely a rocker. But anyhow, this is the album that pretty much made history. I don't know. I like Highway to Hell maybe just a little bit more than this. But I think I am outranked by everybody else in the world. This was their #1 bestseller, and to this day is still selling copies. What a record, huh? Back in Black, Hell's Bells, Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution, Shook Me All Night Long. Great album. Atlantic Records was knowing now that they definitely had made a mistake because AC/DC was taking over the United States too. They were touring. They were now selling out stadiums. And they said, yeah, just bring that album back off the shelf. And this is the cover they gave it. This is AC/DC is Dirty D's Done Dirt Cheap. And it wasn't released in the United States till after Back in Black on March 81. Try to keep going here. Try to get this all in. The next one, AC/DC, For Those About to Rock. Awesome album. Again, Brian Johnson proving that he really had what it takes. Flick of the Switch came out in 83. One of the records that doesn't get a lot of respect. Here was a single off that album called Nervous Shakedown. It has Rock and Rolling, Noise Pollution, Sin City, and This House is on Fire. So that was an excellent EP to help that album out. Also released right afterwards, Fly on the Wall in 1985. Keep going. Who Made Who? Well, Who Made Who was actually a soundtrack. I forget exactly the song of the movie. It was a Stephen King film. I don't know. Maximum Overdrive? I don't know. I forget. Help me, help me. Maybe Dan from Dots and Loops. He knows all about movies. But anyhow, this was a soundtrack that they released. Followed up by Blow Up Your Video. This was actually the last song that I had bought, and I just got this a couple weeks ago. It's a good rocker. I know it was good. Released in 1988 originally. This one was sealed when I bought it. This one is still sealed, but I have listened to it online a few times. I'm going to cut this one open maybe today. Razor's Edge was released in 1990. Had a hard time getting my hands on this one too. This was a live album. There are some versions out that were a little bit more better produced, but this one was the original bootleg version of this live album in December 1977 at New York Recording Studios, Atlantic. Once in a while they go into the recording studio just to play music for the bigwigs. I told you that they were coming out with 74 Jailbreak. This was primarily for the US audience because this has 4 songs off the original 75 pressing of Australian High Voltage. And this came out here in 1994. But we got some of the music back. Excellent album. Jailbreaker, or Ballbreaker, Jailbreaker. Ballbreaker. Ballbreaker was released in 95. Stiff Upper Lip is awesome. They were still putting out extremely good music in 2000 with Stiff Upper Lip. Black Ice, 2008. A lot of people say this was the last of AC/DC's good albums, but I disagree. It's hard to see all that shiny black on black design. Black Ice. Here's another bootleg. This bootleg, Capital of Sin, was in, I think, Amsterdam, 1979, released in 2010. Just awesome live music. I don't have Iron Man 2 or Live at River Platte, but I do have their last studio album, Rock or Bust. Now this had that fancy cover where the the letters bust. Simple. Has a very nice booklet. I won't go through that. And I think it has some real strong songs on here yet. And that, folks, will do it for my AC/DC discography. Notes with some missing music. And I appreciate you for staying with me for so long. And I hope to be back with you soon. Might give it a break. I don't know what we'll do next, but I'll find something. Thanks, everybody.